that we have. I'll send them to you in just a second, just so we can get them to her. Can we get her, can you ask her for her email? I don't have, because I think Nancy was the, okay. Okay,
Thank you. Sorry, I just got my audio working, so I didn't hear anything before that, but I'm here.
great.
Wish I was there in person.
It's like God. Sophie, we hear you, but we can't see you.
I know. You don't want to see me. I have COVID.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry.
Get your boosters, y'all.
Ugh. All right, so these are the recommendations that you all worked on. Hugo, after our last meeting, remember he was talking about connections and he could see those connections amongst the recommendation? He took a shot at making those connections. And then this last thing is what the report is going to look like, right? So, and it's in draft form, and Brad may have something to say about these. But it is, yes, but it's mostly a template. It does have some of the information from, so we'll take a look at it, but yeah. I do, I'm gonna first just kick us off, but first I want to be able to get, I'm going to send it to you and when you get Sophie's email. She needs those. Okay. They're on their way, Shelley. I just sent them to you. Thank you so much. Okay.
So 80s are going to be everywhere. They allow the whole Denver is on that. Hey guys, can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So you can hear me? Hey guys, it's Hugo. I'm just able to join en route. I have to be somewhere at 6 and I'll be in my car. But
Yay.
want to at least join for a few minutes. I heard you speaking in the beginning, but then it went out. So was the document I put together able to be circulated?
Yes. Hi, Hugo. It's Glenna. So.
Hi, Glenna.
Hi, and I'm going to have you speak to it in just a second. I'll kick us off formally. All right, y'all. Here's our purpose for tonight. It's like a work session. It's our last time together. This is it, the final revisions to the recommendations. Oh, okay.
Wait,
We're going to, first of all, I'm going to have Brad sort of walk us through this very, very draft report. Actually, Shelley, we should send this as well to Sophie and to Hugo. So do you have this? You probably don't. Hugo, can you share your emails so that, I actually probably have yours, so never mind. I'll give it to you, Shelley. So in just a minute, Brad's going to sort of walk us through this. We're going to review the latest iterations. Hugo, that's when I'd love for you to share the work that you did in between meetings. You're just going to work in refining as a small group. We'll take those revisions, and then from there, we'll send them out prior to the December meeting, and then I'll talk about the December meeting in just a second. So, yeah, Brad, you
Yeah,
want to?
I'll be very brief. We just put this together this week, so consider it even less than a draft at this point. So don't pay too much attention to the exact verbiage, but what we really maybe call your attention to between now and December is take a thought about how it's arranged, what the categories are, some of the how the report's put together. One of the things that I think that I saw today that I'm not sure that we would entirely put in here is the whole Code Next information, because that's quite extensive and it's just a list of meetings. I'm not sure that that's the best use of the space and people's attention to this work. But then it gets into kind of the mission and goals of the group, and then obviously want to talk a little bit about the background of what you spent the last 11 months looking at, so there'll be a synopsis of all of that work. And then obviously the focus toward the end is really on the recommendations, so obviously that'll be put in following December, and then something around the public engagement, and then what's next in terms of the Home is Key campaign that you heard about last month. So again, the idea at this point is to just consider this the very first shot at how the final report could kind of look, the look and feel of it, how it would be organized, and less about the content at this point, because we're still going to obviously work on that going forward. So just as an FYI for tonight.
Thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hugo, do you want to just give us a little sort of context for the consolidation that you did?
sure. I left the last meeting, trying to think about how, all of our different recommendations, which have a lot of different overlaps, could come together, maybe as part of this report. I kind of worked on it myself, trying to organize it. And then I literally took all of the recommendations and I tried to write a bunch of different prompts. And I literally let the AI actually comb through what we've done and try to aggregate and put things together in a little bit more organized fashion. And it kind of started with the recommendation that Corey and his group had, specific on creating this position, a dedicated fund that could, be funded through a variety of programs and fees and different sources, and then, maintains a board that kind of oversees the full-time position in that fund, and could meet monthly to help advance the initiatives. In my eyes, if after the year of meeting, we could leave this with a full-time, body or group in place that can continue this important work. I think it puts us in a really good position to continue to make an ongoing impact. A lot of our specific recommendations, whether it's build or assist or preserve, are recommendations that, are going to need to go to council, are going to get a lot of input and feedback from Englewood residents, and, would ultimately likely change over time by that board. But I tried to organize a lot of what we had put together in still kind of the same format, but really starting with, kind of creating this person, and then, you know, the funding behind it and the body that oversees it. And then I think really a great next step that would, I'm really sorry I'm not able to be there tonight, would be kind of going through our build, assist, and preserve, and, you know, maybe how it's been consolidated and organized, and maybe like adding a little bit more beef or context to it. But it was my stab at trying to take our, what I think are really good ideas and recommendations, and maybe make them a little less redundant and more cohesive that would fit into a final report or document. And then, you know, I think using the time tonight, using the time at our last meeting to refine those, we're at least on a path to get something presented and, you know, not have to ask for another meeting or session or something like that to get it done.
Any questions for Hugo? Thank you, Hugo. That was some good work in making those connections. All right, so again, you have two things in front of you. You have the final recommendations from our last session. So you can have that for context, and then Hugo's consolidation of some of that. And at this point, I just am gonna open it up for just conversation. When we get to the place where you are actually making a proposed refinement, I would ask that you let me know, because I'm actually in real time going to just be typing this. It was the easiest way I could think to do it. I thought about putting chart paper up, and it just seemed, I anticipated a small group, and it just seemed too complicated to do that. So in real time, and I think, so I'd love just to give you an opportunity for some conversation. Sophie, you should have, and Hugo, we also, just for ease, sent them to you. You should have three things in your email. The first is the refined recommendations from last session. The second is the consolidation by Hugo. The third is the draft report that Brad addressed at the beginning. So, everyone clear about what we're doing at this point? It's truly a refinement exercise. And I think the guiding question is up on the chart paper, which is, what is glaringly missing that without which you would not be able to align on a set of recommendations, on this set of recommendations? Okay? All right. So remember, if you're making specific refinement proposals or suggestions, just give me a heads up so I know where to make them. Now, let me ask you as one question. Do you want to operate, because you have two documents here, do you want to work from Hugo's work, or do you want to work from this product?
Yeah, this is what I've prepared to work.
Okay, so why don't I give you a chance, how about 10 minutes to read through. Hugh, thank you for that, for Hugo's work, and then we'll have a conversation. Yeah?
Perfect. And with me in my car, I'm gonna drop. But I appreciate the work you guys are doing. I'm excited to see what you guys put together in refining this and to be able to comment further. I kind of got to a place where I needed to stop and let other people kind of chime in. I did try to make sure that in what I put together, that we were touching on pretty much all points that were hit in our different recommendations. It's maybe just in a little bit different format. And again, I think it's missing a little bit of clarity and detail behind some of the different areas. So when we say we want to assist in building single family houses, you know, how? Do we want a down payment assistance? You know, what would we want to add to that type of section? I think that you could extrapolate that same comment in a lot of the other areas of what I put together.
Do you have pens?
Sorry.
Do you have pens? Do you need pens?
Yes.
No, it's supposed to be 100, or just 60%, I think. Because it was up to 30 to 60% AMI is what it was aimed at.
Thank you.
And I would ask if you can remember as you're speaking to speak into the microphone.
I'm gonna read this. Okay, so
Yeah, Aaron. Here, we're gonna put you. Yeah, let me just bring you up to speed real quick. Aaron. Gotcha, okay. So, the first thing is, this is just a template resume, but it gives you an idea of the kind of information that's gonna go into final report, right? These are the recommendations that you all in the finance were very investigating. Hugo took those and he worked in, if you remember, there's this conversation about connections, overlap, and consolidating. So he took it for staff and consolidating. So what folks are doing right now is they're reading through this attempt to make those connections.
Okay.
And then when we're finished, we're just gonna have a conversation. I'm gonna take the refinements in written time. And this is our final, so, yeah.
Thanks.
what's that? Did I move my plate or did you? Thank you.
Oh, I threw it away.
Oh, thank you. No, you're good.
Who left this here?
Cherry, thank you for reminding me to give you time to look at, I had that in my notes. I was like, and I skipped right over it.
Okay.
Hi, come on in. Right here, let me bring you up to speed. So, I know, I don't know if you read the last meeting.
I don't think we're all gonna fit at one table anymore.
No.
There's a few more people though.
Yeah.
Oh, let's add another table. Yeah. I'm gonna bring you two up to speed together. Yeah. So, first I'm gonna do here. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, thank you, thank you. All right.
Is there coffee in there? There's tea in there. How many tea?
To the powder creamer. I guess I'm the only one who likes creamers.
They have like black tea in there?
They do, yes.
They do. Okay.
They have black tea is like constant common, but there's like orange spice.
Nice. Yeah, I will get some.
Yeah,
They didn't
I like that one
have
too.
native tea, so.
This is just really, it's a template at this point, but it's what the report will ultimately look like, in terms of sort of layout.
stuff.
There's some content in here, but
not in
and,
here.
Well, I mean, there's specific numbers.
pay attention
aren't
as
on
much
those.
to the, but it does have some, it'll give you an idea, right? So that's just so, for those who are visual, wanting to understand. So where the group is right now is they're reviewing this. And then we're just gonna have a conversation, and then just as a reminder, tonight's the final night for refinement, because we have to go into December and, either sort of gonna check for consensus, hopefully we'll have
There's no
consensus, if
mention
not,
of any
we'll go. And,
EMI
so I think the
percentages.
question
Yeah,
to help
what's-
guide your
what's
thinking
tricky
is
to
what is
about
there
that I
and
feel like
missing that
is
is not addressed would prevent you.
setting the AMIs, we really need to look at
Any
what's cost of living
I
versus
think it's a moving target.
There's
like, it's kind of hard because I just wonder if that needs to fall under whoever that person is.
Right.
They hire, because there needs to be, because like some notes I was taking in general, like cost of living in the Denver area is 12% higher than the national average. That should be taken into account when we're looking at AMIs. And it should be included.
AMI is locally based, I mean, the Denver Metro has an AMI.
Yeah.
You could slice and dice as much as you
There's
want, but I feel like
proposed refinements, I'm
probably
just
not
gonna be
getting
typing
a
those
ton
on.
more benefit.
So then I don't feel like we should be, right?
So I'll just be
Should that
typing
the
it all.
Right.
Like-
I mean,
so, like,
we
I just don't
shouldn't,
feel like
we're not
that's-
gonna affect the AMI at all. Like
Like,
AMI is determined by
we should
HUD
have
for our
to-
area,
Yeah.
yeah. And if you start
So like. this
creating your
has
own
those
AMI,
numbers.
then you're gonna lose that federal and state funding that goes on based on that.
So I'm wondering if that's
Specific.
why they're not in. That's what I'm saying, because I don't think we need to get.
I will say, 30 to 80% is extremely low to low income.
That's
I work
like-
with 80% AMI.
That's straight
That is a
poverty.
specific,
Yeah.
well, there's a rate, there's a spectrum, that is a specific grouping, and then there's also 80 to 120, middle income, workforce, you know, that
Yeah,
have
which
different needs, but all need
included already in
things.
HUD, up to 120 is already, right, it's already.
It depends on the program.
It depends on the program.
So should we make any recommendations or leave that up to the person?
Well,
that
don't we
we're-
talk in there about,
Well, we did in here some, I thought we did at one point, but I'm not seeing any in here, and the only thing I'm seeing here is. Where did it go? It's almost like none of it made its way into it. Oh, right here. No, that's not it either. So it's not in there, because I thought we had up to 120 at one point.
On page 6, there's, yeah, you see it, right?
But that's in like
No.
regional / county approach for new funding grants. That's not really, I don't even know what this is, I put a
Page 6,
question mark.
there's
That's.
the definition of
That's an affordable unit specifically, but that's not saying anything about like who would be
eligible.
eligible.
Okay.
So should we say something, or do we leave that up to who's saying this person determines?
I don't know, still
Eligibility.
kind of read through this thing. I think that's what we're doing right now, right? Just taking things. I don't know. I need to get going.
Yeah, it's not it.
I think what you're saying, I agree with, and that's the conclusion that I came to with like all the assist recommendations. It really just comes down to hiring that person.
To like really
create
figure it
and-
out.
Yeah, because that's what we need, is someone who can dig into all these numbers, who can look at what the need is and match the programs to the needs. And like, that's beyond the scope of what we're able to do.
Yeah, because
Or
like,
even recommend.
yeah, like the U.S. Department of HUD, when you look at their adjusted home income limits, it's all by area.
Yeah,
It varies.
sure, if
So
y'all
it's
are
like-
talking, but I'm not really able to hear anything. Do y'all have mics on? Sorry to bother.
Sorry, I was saying that the conclusion that I came to for the assist piece would really just be to hire this person through the city to dig into these programs and the needs and match the program to the need and create all of these assistance things. Look at the LibWork criteria, create the school enrollment consideration, the senior housing, look at all of these different things. But it's beyond the scope of what we're able to recommend. Beyond just saying someone should dig into this.
Because what we were talking about is not recommending specific, like, income limits, because it's going to be very specific to our area, because even like HUD has different areas depending on if you're in Teller County, Colorado Springs, and so we can't come up with that we don't feel like we can say what that magic number is.
I think what I would say is glaringly missing, I guess, is actually some of those metrics. And I think as far as what you're talking about, that's where we would get into the percentages. You know, but I mean, things that, well, I would say that this position, we should definitely have some kind of metrics, like for their performance or something that they need to deliver.
But I think that's under number one though. Because this is what they would do: champion affordable housing initiatives, facilitate public-private partnerships, oversee funding requests and allocations,
Yeah, but I mean,
create the
like,
community engagement campaign, provide annual reviews.
I do think we should try to avoid a situation where we have a staff member who's not finding much.
But
and
they're
then-
accountable to a board too. That's the other piece of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, do we know what the board is how they're gonna hold them to account, or?
No, I think that's part of this, right? Is the position and then the creation of a community
Well,
board.
I would just say that what we have right now would not preclude a situation in which we have a staff member who isn't like finding much, who isn't accomplishing much, and that then stuff is getting built that's all market rate. You know, I mean, I think we should probably recommend something as far as, like, somewhere in here, we had something about and in here too, a percentage of new units should be below market rate, should be affordable, like what
I don't
percentage?
see it in either.
Yeah. Well, so that's what I would say to answer that question. That's what's glaringly missing to me, is what percentage is affordable to what, you know, what income bracket? And then also, how do we try to ensure that this person actually does stuff, accomplishes something?
Are you speaking specifically to new development, like of what is being built, what percentages?
Yeah, because I know that for a time, the original Code Next, the idea was that 25% of new units, at least 25, so it was going to allow, I think, if I remember right, it was going to allow duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, and at least 25% of any of those was going to need to be affordable. So it'd basically be,
Four or more. If it had four or more, 25% had to be affordable.
well, at some point, I know that they were talking about, so if it was a duplex, it would be one unit. If it was a triplex, like no matter what, it would be one unit would be affordable of those three options. And so, you know, I think some kind of metric like that is something maybe we should try to come up with and deliver to council. And personally,
And I mean,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
if we were to try to implement, that could be built into an inclusionary zoning policy that we could recommend. For example, Littleton requires for developments of 19 or more units, 5% be designated affordable. And then they have a fee in lieu option of about $269,000 per unit. So if we wanted to recommend that as part of build, as like kind of an ongoing commitment to development in Inglewood, I mean, I think that would fall well under that category.
Yeah, my personal opinion is that 5% is very, very low. And I think especially if we're talking about upzoning any kind of single-family lots, I think one thing we should really keep in mind is that the last code next blew up spectacularly. And so we don't want to just deliver to that exact same recipe, you know what I mean? And I do think, because at one point they were talking about the one affordable unit would be 80% AMI. It crept up to 100, and then it went up to 120 to 140. And I think some of this is why people didn't like it, you know? And I would personally, I mean, just from the point of view that you're not going to get affordable housing without affordable housing, I would say we should make it a really high percentage. I mean, I would say like 100%, like just have nonprofit developers do it.
I
That's
mean,
my
I
opinion,
think, but you're, without like really digging into the needs and knowing the numbers, we're throwing arbitrary numbers at this without actually having like a baseline of what that's gonna do for the community. That's what this person needs to do, in my opinion.
Well, we don't want to just completely outsource our whole job. I mean, that's what you're.
Well, and I think there's a point of clarification on what our job is here again. You know, if we're creating an advisory board, like it's just always a challenge, especially with how we all care and are passionate about this, to not get into the weeds and try to do this work for the people who are supposed to do the work. And so maybe just a reframing and a reset of like, you know, how much detail should we be getting into at this point? Like, I mean, I think in some of our conversation, you know, it was an approach of, you know, very high-level mission focus of like, we want to support all levels of income across the community, you know, some very broad stuff, which it needs to be more specific, and we don't want to water it down, but we also don't, like, somebody at some point in Littleton thought $269,000 could build an affordable housing unit. It cannot, you know, but that's what they got, because, you know, they're focused on the details there. So I'm bringing up the thought of how much do we want to get locked into now versus how much do we want to find the right people to do this as part of their job every single day.
And I think that's a big.
Well, and I'm giving those details not as a proposal that we do it exactly the same way as them, just as kind of a ballpark of where a neighboring community landed on this. And we could potentially go up from that, or we could, you know, or if, like you're saying, basically we want to say, we recommend a mandatory inclusionary policy, and we recommend, you know, study be done to determine the feasibility at certain benchmarks. But I think having a recommendation for a particular type of policy would be helpful. But I could be on my own on that.
I do see that we do have information on the specific kind of units we need based on AMI on one of the things we sent out. For example, for people at 0 to 30% AMI, we need around, 1,600 units. But then down here, so then at the second is 30 to 60% AMI, where the greatest need is, and then 120% AMI is third.
That's something
So
that I
that-
included in our.
Yeah, so
assist,
that's
But that got cut out
in
as
there.
well, yeah.
And so I almost think,
We put that
since
back
that
in.
didn't make it here, that kind of, like, we do have some of the data that we need.
Yeah, and we did talk about these numbers originally.
Yeah,
I'm just
so-
saying, like, when Sophie's quoting these numbers that Littleton is doing, how much research did they put into those numbers? Where did those numbers come from versus us just saying it needs to be 100% affordable and recommending that? And that's where I think I'm agreeing with you on how far do we want to get into this?
Well, ultimately, whatever we recommend isn't binding, right?
It's a recommendation.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so I think, you know, more important than it should be 75% of this and this metric of this, of like, we are recommending very strong support for low-income individuals to have access to affordable housing. We recommend these methods to accomplish it. So it, you know, we're not saying do these details, we're saying this is what we think your approach should be, and here are the recommendations of tactics or strategies to achieve that. I'm just thinking of end result of what we're doing, you know.
So we say there should be a percentage of new builds that are affordable. We're not saying what percentage is.
We should also give the why, is what I'm saying, because our recommendation should have a why with it.
Currently, there's no, inclusionary ordinance in Inglewood requiring anyone to do anything affordable. So we say that we recommend that we do include that in any future development where there is an inclusionary zoning ordinance or a fee in lieu.
Sophie, could you hear that piece?
Yes.
Okay.
But
Um,
whoever's doing this is the person who determines how much that fee in lieu is based on what the city's needs are. Or, do we need the housing built versus the fee paid? So then the fee's much higher, so it discourages people to pay it. Those are the things that I think we aren't digging into.
But to clarify, we could maybe specify whether we think it should be voluntary or mandatory
Yes, I
for
agree.
developers to participate.
100% yes.
And I would fall on mandatory
Yeah,
based on root policies assessment.
I would too.
I mean, if you're gonna kick this off, let's make it mandatory and then adjust as needed, right? And that's what the board is for, is to reexamine the needs.
Well, I do think anything similar to like what Littleton did with 5% of 19 units or something, that doesn't address the, what could potentially happen in R1 in single family. There's currently single family zoning. And I do think we should have something to say about that if that's upzoned or anything.
I mean, I think that got taken off the table, so I don't think that's,
Upzoning in R1?
yeah. It's it's out of code next. It's not even under consideration anymore.
Is that something we all feel? That it's not?
I mean, isn't code next finalized as of now, like the revisions that they put forward? Isn't it done? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would have to go to vote. It would have to go back to the format that it was in when it didn't pass the last time before it could be passed now. To upzone R1 or change any zoning. I think everybody spoke on that and didn't want it.
Okay, so here is one thing that I'm hearing that I just want to, I don't know if this is the time I want to have the conversation keep going, right? And have you wrestle with it, take you all the way back to the ground zone. Like it may feel like we're taking a couple of steps back, but this is critical to building that alignment. But the point of discussion I'm hearing is this notion of specificity. Do we put metrics and numbers? Or do we have it more broad and we put language in here that's perhaps stronger around this created position and board oversight and what needs to be done to get to that number, to get to the specific metrics? Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah. Personally, I think it's okay to put numbers in there, like I said, I mean, just to communicate our preferences, and they don't have to stick to the numbers. It's just
Or
as a way.
at least a range.
Yeah,
Like, we don't have to
range.
say
Yeah.
35% AMI, only these people.
Yeah.
You can say, please focus on this percentage from here to here of AMI, if we go with that, and focus on our preferences for mandatory inclusionary zoning, if that's our preference, over some other tools, and put more weight on options and do a range if we're talking about numbers for anything. Because I do think if we just say inclusionary zoning, for anybody else reading it cold is going to be like, oh, 4% maybe, which doesn't feel like that's the group's preference. So if we don't put any number on it, people are just going to be like, oh,
Well, and
4%, you
It's
know.
open to
we had
interpretation.
numbers, like in recommendation number
Yeah.
2, we had 30 here, 80, and then we had 80% to 120 for something. So it just seems like all of the numbers
I took that from the
disappeared.
policy assessment.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna get back to, is what do we think about, not just us giving a range, and not that it's arbitrary, but like, really I mean, the housing needs assessment has really dialed in.
I can't hear you,
where
sorry.
the focus should be. Using or referring back to the housing needs assessment and our recommendation to be use tools like this to direct, the AMI levels or the housing types or the housing, sizes according to what studies show. I mean, I feel that's more directed, more tactical, more analytical than just, hey, focus all your efforts on 80% and below. Because maybe it needs to be on 50% and below, or maybe it needs to be 100 to 70. Where those specific gaps are, that's what the housing need assessment does, rather than, what we feel is the right AMI range.
I don't know if this is the right place to address this too, but this task force report, one thing I would really like to see included in it is an overview of the need, because it's not mentioned anywhere in here. What is the population of Inglewood? What is the breakdown of the group policy assessment, the need assessment? If we're gonna communicate solutions, we need to communicate the need also, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And does anybody have that pulled up?
I do. Oh, no, I don't. Sorry, I just have the, where they just wrote it down, like basic, how many. Is that
Yeah,
what you're talking
it's in
about?
the root policy assessment though, no, but even just going through the root policy assessment and saying what percentage of our population is 30% of AMI and below, or in these ranges that we're trying to serve, and how many of our people who work here don't live here? How many people rent? Tell the people what we're trying to solve before we just throw solutions at it.
There was, at the study session last week,
I watched that, yeah.
there was resistance from council to even adopt or to follow the state's mandate to do a housing needs assessment, even though we already have one done that could be submitted by the end of the year. I think, so clearly, I think council needs to hear from us, no, do the needs assessment, use what we have, and then commit to redoing one periodically as the legislature requires. Use metrics, use data to determine where your efforts should be focused. Clearly they need to hear that recommendation.
Okay, so I'm hearing specifically for the report to overview the group policy needs assessment to create, that's sort of compelling why, I think, that you were speaking to, Erin. Yeah, okay.
Are you saying something in addition to what group policy already did?
Well, the state legislature requires one to be done starting, next year, but if we've already done one within the past 2 years, we can submit it, and then it requires an update every, 3 or 5 years or
Oh,
something like that.
okay.
And it's likely that they will come back to us for revisions on the one that we've already done to meet the current standards of the one that they're requesting. So there will be more work that's needed to this.
Possibly. I feel like
Potentially,
they'll
yeah.
accept it.
There could be, right, yeah.
And I think something that we added to our recommendation for the Board of Oversight was to use this, regularly completed housing assessment as kind of the roadmap for what the greatest needs were, and to form priorities based on whatever revenue we have from our affordable housing tax revenue source, our banks. So that's also an integral part of our recommendation, to have an oversight board as well.
So I guess my suggestion for our recommendation would be, when it comes to quantifying targeted income levels, we refer back to the housing needs assessments rather than 30 to 80 or 30 and below or up to 120. That would be my recommendation.
But do we feel
Well, but
comfortable giving a percentage of new builds that would have to be?
Different. I think, I would say to use the data from needs assessments like that, but also I'm in agreement, an inclusionary housing ordinance should have some push to it.
Yeah. I agree. 5% just seems.
I think if you do,
It seems like
It's
a
a
seems
nothing.
token.
It's a-
Seems like, yeah.
if you do it, go bigger, or not at all,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Otherwise, you're just transferring some cost for a builder to make the affordable units and the cost to
then we're gonna end up with luxury units
Yes.
and basic units.
You just
And that's
have-
how they're gonna meet the, so.
Exactly. So I'm okay with going big with that.
And Jake, you said the original was 25 for Code Next?
Well, that was when they were talking about repealing single-family zoning, and I'm not sure if that is, I mean, I'm not, I am not sure whether that is on the table or not, because it looks like we did have some stuff in here about allowing multiple units in small apartment buildings in certain zone districts, so, I mean,
In R2, yeah, so, well, and in the hospital district too.
isn't that already the
District.
case in R2 though?
R2, you can do some of it,
I
yeah.
thought this was more about encouraging this type of development in use by right areas.
Yeah, not creating new zoning. That's what I wanted to focus on too, is really streamlining what they've already done and what they put into place to make it more affordable and more efficient to do it, the cottage houses and the ADUs in the zones that already allow it, not to create new.
I think that's, and I mean, maybe staff could provide some insight, but I think it's pretty off the table to reopen the idea of upzoning R1.
Yeah, I agree.
So a lot of people
Just too-
showed up for
Wow.
that.
Too toxic, too.
Yeah, I do think that's the case. I think what the council wound up doing in terms of adoption of the new development code was that's the new baseline. And what do we do to try to build affordability into that capacity? And if that's wrong at some point down the line, obviously it could be reconsidered, but at least at this point, that was, I think, the assumption when they adopted it a little over a year ago.
That's good to know, thanks.
There were several recall elections based on.
I know more than
pretty much
half
that.
of council, yeah.
There's also, so in, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no,
Sophie,
I was just gonna
please.
say, a lot of what we've written into, build is, for expanding or dropping lot minimums, creating the ability for more subdivision of lots and cottage zoning, which is a direct, update to the zoning code. I mean, I think it's worth including, even if we think it's not politically viable, is that, or do we agree on that?
The lot splitting?
Lot splitting and dropping lot minimums. I mean, Code Next dropped lot minimums some, but I think that's basically what cottage zoning would be dropping lot minimums lower than they currently exist, which is a code
Lot
issue.
minimum meaning how many like units can be on a
Square
single lot? So like more ADUs on a single lot, I think, is that what we're talking about? Yeah, yeah.
You could have smaller cottage homes on smaller lots.
So I was under,
Like,
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So I was under the impression cottage house specifically meant lot splitting. Is that not the case? I guess my idea was
I think
like,
we're saying the same thing.
yeah, yeah. And does Code Next, did that allow lot splitting for cottage houses?
In
Corner
R2.
lots.
I'm
Corner
thinking,
lot R2,
I'm
yeah.
thinking cottage house was larger lots with like courtyard, or maybe that's
It
courtyard
is, yes,
typology.
it's 6 units, up to 6 units on a corner lot in R2, but I
So
think.
not necessarily splitting, could be, but not
Yeah.
specifically. It's just a typology of, 6 inward-facing small homes that were
Okay.
large residential lots.
Right, that was one we looked at, the city provided options on
Yeah.
one lot, but was that R2? That was something that's
I
already
think it was on
allowed?
the larger R1A lots, or,
I don't
there
think.
there was only a smattering of lots that would accept it.
Right,
Because I thought at some point Hugo was talking about, right, some concept where you take like a normal, like R1 lot, I think even like R1B, maybe that's too small, but in any case, like, cut it in half and then cut that half in half, and then you could have like a 2-story, 1,200 square foot house on each of those. I thought that was an interesting idea.
And that would be a change to current zoning, Code Next, zone.
Yeah, there was a cottage zoning document that I think Hugo did introduce in our May 2nd materials, and that's basically just what it's saying, is that cutting those lots, allowing more lot subdivision so that they can have a house in the front and the back, basically, that are like of the same profile,
It creates
but they're
softer
smaller
density.
footprint buildings on smaller square foot lots.
And I'm not against making a recommendation.
So I guess two different concepts known as cottage houses, but.
I'm not against making a recommendation to council that includes change to R1 zoning as part of the package. I'm just saying at this point in time, it's highly unlikely.
I pulled up the needs assessment summary that they did, the presentation, and it has a housing gap summary. So it shows at people less than 30% AMI, we have a 1,537 unit gap between supply and demand. At less than 50% AMI, we have an 801 unit gap. At 30 to 80% AMI, we have a 35% point gap between supply and demand. And then at a 30 to 120% AMI, we have a 37% point gap between supply and demand. So we're definitely, it increases between 30 to 80 and 30 to 120 pretty significantly. And it identifies the need. And I think that's what we should suggest that they focus on, is those numbers. It just went.
One other nuance to that is that, AMIs change over time.
Every year. Yeah.
Not because people make more money in an area, but because poor people move out and rich people move in. So recommendations here specifically focused on anti-displacement and preservation of affordable housing. We just need to make sure that's part of the package.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because just basing it on AMI will just be in the same cycle of gentrification that we see everywhere.
Well, and I
else.
think that's why it's important to identify how many people are renters, how many people are working here that don't live here, and focus on those, have those
Well,
numbers.
I mean, do we just, as a recommendation, focus on percentage or the demographics that are cost burdened? Is that too broad? Anybody who's spending,
Well, there's people,
that's too big.
200% of AMI that are cost burden.
Yeah,
Well,
We haven't heard from Kevin or Amber much, or even Joe, so I'd love just if you have something to weigh in on the conversation.
I'm just trying to get caught up here. I'm missing last week. I think I got really behind, and I'm trying to wrap my head around what's being said here, so I can get on board as well.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're going in the right direction. There are a few things that concern me. Like I said, I'd like to just listen a little bit more
You got it.
and try to catch up to what's going on here, because I do have some things I'd like to say here and add to this conversation.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry, one thing I was gonna bring it up at the beginning was the short-term rental and ADU situation. I am concerned about building ADUs to just be used as short-term rentals. If right now the short-term rental policy for Inglewood is that you can rent out an ADU for short-term rentals, then we're not going to necessarily do any good by allowing or even doing tax credits or streamlining ADUs. To me, it's like we're doing a bunch of work for nothing. So I would like to know what our plans for short-term rentals are going forward. If say someone did build 4 or 6 cottage houses on one property and lived in one of them and then rented all the rest out as short-term rentals, where are we? So
you're talking short-term rentals like Airbnb.
Yeah.
As long as your property's owner occupied, you can rent the rest of it.
So just put it in context, like in the past 5 years, I think less than 20 ADUs have been built, and
But that's cost,
Is that-
because they're
is that
cost
about-
prohibitive.
ADUs or STR?
ADUs.
Yeah, it's not a large number.
But I mean, if
And
you're
then the
talking
number of
about lowering the
STRs.
cost.
We have about 60 licensed STRs.
60 licenses, so maybe 120 STRs.
so wait, yeah, what kind of incentives or like things were we thinking that you could do to make it easier to build an ADU?
I mean, on the second page of Hugo's printout, incentivize affordable developments and sales, offer tax credits permits for affordable second units. So that one right there, I'm like, okay.
Well, how about that's just completely contingent on it cannot be an SDR, right? And I guess I don't know exactly how that's implemented, but.
Yeah, same.
Well, some of the other things we talked about too were like streamlining the design process and streamlining the permitting timeframe, so.
Pre-approved plans.
Yeah, pre-approved plans, so I think a lot of that got cut out of this, but,
Or model.
once that becomes streamlined, it becomes more affordable, and then what's to stop turn 20 into 200, you know, in the next few years, and then, like Joe's saying, they're all short-term rentals because we didn't put anything in place, so I agree with what you're saying, because that's,
That's a good point.
yeah.
Amber, please, do you have anything that you want to make sure you have an opportunity to weigh in?
No, just that I think using that housing needs assessment, which obviously goes all the way up to 120% AMI, but then I also liked how he mentioned anti-displacement, and I wonder if we, you know, say that they're focused on that specifically, but also noting that, like, when it comes to anti-displacement, we're not just looking at something like AMI. So I don't know, I just liked that being the focus, because the reality is it's like a rip-rap of Englewood for a lot of people right now, just leaving, moving, and that turnover affects schools and neighborhoods and everything. Oh, sorry. But then I do think having, also if we're gonna have these little cottages or ADUs, we have to make sure that people are living in them, and we're not gonna become like the next Airbnb go-to spot, because everybody wants to be here. Central to everything. I could see lots of people being like, oh, I'm gonna make lots of money, you know.
I think I have no problem putting restrictions on short-term
Can you
rentals.
speak in a little bit louder, please?
I have no problem putting restrictions on short-term rentals.
So we need to get that in.
But making it, that's why I like cottage zoning so much, because it's not just adding strategic, well-thought-out density that's not luxury. It's also giving opportunities for it to be owned by someone affordably, not just rented, which from the report, I'm under the impression that there are a ton of houses that are rented in Englewood, owned by people that don't even live in Englewood. And I feel like cottage zoning addresses that, but if we build a bunch of ADUs and make it easy. Now I'm just thinking out loud, sorry. I guess if those have to be built by the homeowner on the same lot and it's an ADU, are we saying they can rent those to somebody in Englewood for however much they want? Because as much as I'm okay with inclusionary zoning for multifamily, these little guys, like an ADU that might be rented by the main house owner, like, we need to make those affordable and get more of those built, especially since we built like 10, so I'm hesitant to put a ton of restriction on forcing affordability on an ADU that's a rental.
I agree. I'm not so concerned about someone building an ADU and then renting it out to anybody. My concern is short-term rentals. That's my only.
Yeah, where it's just purely a business enterprise.
Yeah.
It's not housing,
Like if.
it's lodging.
And if the ADUs are market rates for rent or whatever, that's fine by me. I don't necessarily think we need to put rent caps or restrictions on ADUs. Just that they are for people who are living there for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 3 years.
Well, and these are individual homeowners building them, financing them. There has to be a return of some kind.
Right.
Right, but as long as it's not short-term rentals, because that doesn't help our problem.
Yeah.
Um,
And we currently have nothing about that right now, right?
So I wonder, we have an hour,
So we'll spend an hour scheduling our next meeting next week.
That's right. Here's my question and maybe a proposal. So first of all, the question is, again, not a subject matter expert, I haven't crosswalked this final iteration with what the work that Hugo did. Neither of you, you just got it, right? So, but we need to have something to work against. And my question is, are you comfortable going through this, given that you made an attempt to try to consolidate and making specific refinements to using this document?
I'm down.
Is everyone down
I
with
think
that?
Hugo's is much cleaner and better than the other one.
It's easy to add in specificity rather than, yeah.
Okay, great. So let's just start. I don't want to completely shut down the conversation, but I also want to get us moving to concrete refinements to Hugo's document. So before I do that, I'm going to ask if you will give me a second just to pull up his document. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best to redline it essentially, so that when we send it out, you'll see specifically in red what your refinements. So I'm going to do that in real time. So it may mean that I interrupt you and ask for clarity or check to make sure that I've got it right, okay? Just one sec. So this first one is the administrative and organizational actions. And I'm going to go to the first bullet point, so now we're going to get pretty granular at this point. Create dedicated position and oversight. And then it has the specifics of what that person would be responsible for. Are there changes, refinements to that first, it's a dash right here. So it includes the first one that says create dedicated position and oversight and everything that falls underneath it. So, and how I'm going to ask you to do this is I'm going to ask you to use proposal language. The proposal language is I propose, so it then everyone signals that you've moved out of the discussion and you're actually proposing a refinement. So you can have some discussion, but when you get ready to make a specific recommendation for a refinement, please use this terminology, and I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I propose. And then you stop and we can ask for questions or counter proposals. Make sense? Okay.
I propose that we put in specific verbiage to use the metrics in the root policy research study as a baseline for success, or as what the numbers are that we're targeting. It is that I propose that we use those numbers in creating this position instead of just a broad.
So under the establish a full-time affordable housing coordinator 2, would it be ensure?
Champion affordable housing initiatives using the root policy research study done on Inglewood as metrics for housing needs. I don't know. Help me out.
I guess.
Somebody help me.
You're talking more about instead of like providing target AMIs, saying defer to the root policy thing.
Well, the root policy research defines the target AMIs that have the biggest needs in Inglewood.
Yeah, so that's what you mean.
Yeah,
is what I'm
right,
saying.
yeah.
And we could propose as a yes and to this proposal that we recommend that these housing assessments be done at regular intervals to inform the work of the Affordable Housing Coordinator and the Affordable Housing Board or Commission.
Okay, can you,
And-
Sophie, could you please, so first of all, before you make a counter proposal, let me get the first proposal correct, okay? Or in addition to the proposal. So, champion affordable housing initiative using the root policy assessment study completed for Inglewood. There was something else that you were trying to get to. Here,
Just like as a baseline. I can't even, I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't have it.
The focus of the position and the commission should be informed by the housing needs assessment, and subsequent assessments should be performed at regular intervals to continue the impact of the work.
I guess we're focusing on this person's deliverables, right? That they're, what they deliver should be informed by that.
So I'm not gonna be able to do this if the conversation continues. I won't be able to capture it. So at this point, I'm gonna get pretty deliberate in how I'm facilitating y'all, okay? So we have a proposal. Now let's, Sophie made a different one. I didn't get all of that because it was pretty long. So Sophie, if you could just hold on to that. Aaron, are you going to provide the language that?
I'm trying to stick within the framework, but what I want to suggest or propose, I don't want to, I think there's a structural thing to fix with this first that might help us get some traction. I feel like when we look at bullet point number 1, then we've got bullet point number 2, that's when we get into build, and then 3 is assist and preserve. These are the strategies, right? Administrative actions and organizational actions, I feel like bullet point number 1 is really focused around this person. I have a separate proposal for that. But what I propose is that we have a sort of overarching paragraph rather than just this one sentence at the top that kind of sets the groundwork for how these other elements come in, which would include things like being strategic using the root policy information, sort of these larger guiding principles in this first paragraph, and then the strategies come below. Because I feel like that's what we're getting spinning on, are some of these guiding principles. And then once we get those kind of defined, we can get into details on the strategies.
Sophie, does that get to your suggestion of ensuring that we have language around conducting these assessments on an ongoing basis? If we pull that up, what I hear you saying, Aaron, is that we're going to give more context. We're going to pull up in that first paragraph at that high level. So being strategic, using the root policy assessment to help inform specific metrics. That's what I hear, right? And then ensure that assessments are conducted on an ongoing
Periodic
basis. What else would you pull up?
I would pull up that the city needs to make investments in this. When we're talking about a staff person, when we're talking about funding, that sort of, my brain always goes back to the stupid college essay format. I'm thinking of an intro paragraph here where we're pre-shadowing sort of some of the details below, but framing them in guiding principles, which includes being data-driven, following the housing needs assessments.
Facilitating public-private partnerships.
Making investments in both, the city itself making investments in both staff and resources to further availability of affordable housing.
What was the last part?
The city making investments in both staff and resources, money, to further these goals.
Okay.
And then,
I mean, I think each of these bullet points could be brought up into that general description, right? The facilitate public-private partnerships, oversee funding requests and allocations, focus on community engagement, and then provide annual feedback or even quarterly feedback to the board and the community.
well, I think that community engagement piece is important, like, you know, that this is connected to the community and getting.
But do you think that's the details that we need to get into, or do you think that's just part of that general?
General at the top.
Yeah,
Again,
right.
let's get that big stuff established, and then we get into the specifics.
So,
May I?
please, Sophie.
I don't disagree, but I did want to just propose moving the bullet points under prioritize funding sources that I don't feel like,
Oh, we lost her.
Can you tell us where you, oh, got it, okay.
I think we lost her.
So are you suggesting we pull that up, Sophie?
yes, like this was our preferential, our prioritization that we stated around determining which funding sources should be implemented. And then we provided a list of possibilities as the other part of fund, all the different potential taxes. So those bullet points under there are kind of the things that we thought should be weighed as considerations when performing an assessment of which funding sources should be chosen. So I think they fall better in our overarching description of priorities rather than under this position.
All right, so the proposal is as those guiding principles. So just want to remind you all that you started here with your strategic vision. What I hear, Aaron, so that's the big, broad. And then what I hear you saying is this sort of narrowing down just a little bit into these sort of guiding principles, right? And then from your guiding principles will come your specific recommendations
Of strategy, yeah.
and strategy. Does that make sense? So what I heard Sophie say is that those bullet points that were underneath the specific sort of job role for this person, that we would pull that up. So you have now essentially sort of 4 guiding principles, or really 3 guiding principles. So the first one being strategic, using the RUE, and we'll wordsmith this, don't worry about it. Being strategic, using the RUE policy assessment to help inform priorities and specific metrics. Is that right? Okay. Ensure that it's, and then maybe this isn't a separate, sounds like the same one, which is ensure that those are, assessments are conducted on a periodic basis. So it's data driven, okay? Then you add the city needs to, and then it's sort of a commitment of investments.
Resources.
Is the next one.
Yep.
City needs to make investments in staff and resources to further the following the task force recommendations. Then you have a third that Sophie's recommending, which is prioritize funding sources that distribute impact across multiple stakeholders, leverage profits from property sales / ownership, support sustainable affordable housing development.
I would.
And that third one, I don't think is
I think we need the
necessary.
community engagement in there too.
Well, yeah, and I would say that those could really be, especially coming right after the city make the investment, is that the city also leverage additional outside funding sources or leverage outside investment. So multiple stakeholders, profit from sales, property sales and ownership. This is the idea of like leveraging new or outside or novel sources.
I think impact across multiple stakeholders, to me, that means who it impacts, right? So the homeowners, renters, residents, workers, school people. I think that's what I take from that, not
Who's being taxed
Yeah.
Oh,
to pay for it?
That's how I interpret it.
got it.
So that could be a separate, so let me just, I'm gonna keep saying back, y'all, I know this is gonna get so tedious and your head's gonna wanna explode, but this is what's gonna happen right now. So, we've got the data-driven, The next one is a commitment by the city in terms of investing in staff and resources. I heard a tag on to that, which is leveraging outside, new outside sources. And then there's this third one, which is the prioritization of funding sources that I just pulled up from that Sophie was recommending as a guiding principle. These are your guiding principles.
So what you're writing down now is basically kind of a new hierarchy for our bullet point or outline here?
What I'm doing is you're gonna have your strategic vision, sort of here. So you'll start with that. It's hard to type. Then you have this sort of paragraph that sets the stage for the recommendations. And what I heard Erin saying is those are sort of your guiding principles. Those are the things that you want to pull up, and they are agnostic to whether or not it's build or fund, or it's just, we want data-driven, we want the city to commit, and we want these kind of, and maybe this third one doesn't belong there, maybe it's the thing not like the others, but this prioritization of funding sources.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes.
Can I make a proposal? Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry.
Let me reframe and restate my proposal. And then we start. Same thing, but here's what I'm getting out of what we've been talking about, and also kind of pulling up everything that's in Hugo's summary is that, yes, being data-driven and strategic by using the housing needs assessment. I wouldn't specifically call out root policy because they may not be the ones who do the next one, but housing needs assessments. The city needs to invest, the city needs to leverage other investment, the city needs to get creative, the city needs to engage and inform the community, and the city needs to go deep. That's the last page of like support services and like really reaching down and helping those who need the support.
What was the last one?
Go deep. That's just my shorthand, but like, you know.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so like the last bullet here was about support services. And we also had talked about at one point about making sure we're including transitional and permanent supportive housing, and just that idea that this really
Cover the full spectrum of housing.
cover the full spectrum. Yeah.
Housing needs.
Yeah, that's what I mean by going deep, I guess, is addressing as many aspects as possible for as many people in need as possible.
Okay, here's what I'm gonna propose. You had a suggestion, let me hear that. Okay,
So I would propose we eliminate this community engagement piece. I think this person shouldn't spend their time making pamphlets. I think we should have, like, the communications department do that kind of stuff. That's my.
okay, make sure I circle back to that. Let me get,
I think that's
Here's
what
what-
they're doing with this,
this is
right?
most unorthodox. Here's what's
Right,
gonna
that's what already
happen.
was happening kind of with this
You
video they're doing.
are going to tell us what you mean here and here, right?
Okay.
So give it a little bit
Yep.
of,
So I had said, we
Fluff.
talked about data-driven, we talked about the city investing in the person or.
and by, I'm
department.
sorry to interrupt, Erin, I mean type it.
Oh, okay.
And then we're gonna pause and we're gonna check in with everyone. And then we're gonna get down to the recommendations.
I mean, I would agree with you on getting rid of the community engagement piece because that's what they're already doing with
Yeah,
the video.
we have a consultant.
Yeah, that's what
doing
Slate
that.
Communications is doing. They're creating this report that's gonna be public facing and then, yeah, I think the
I-
whole
yeah.
home is the key campaign, right?
I don't know if that,
I've
yeah,
heard that.
home is the
Yeah,
key.
communications or consultant or whatever. I just feel like this person could spend their time.
They could
finding the
provide
grants.
data for
Yeah.
this
Sure.
community engagement, but
Yeah.
but the actual community engagement is
The
not.
one thing I do worry about though, under that community engagement, is if we pursue ways to make ADUs easier and cottage zoning, people will need an education on that. And who's gonna do that?
I think that's where
Just- are we
this
just
person
saying
will
the
provide
city
the
do that?
data to the communications
Well, I don't mean
Yeah,
just
that's-
data, I don't mean just data, I mean explaining it to,
That's what the communications
residents.
department would do.
Yeah.
That's, they create a campaign around,
Yeah,
like,
that's-
anything new that comes out, like, if we're making an effort to streamline ADUs, then there's like,
Oh,
a
we're
look what
saying-
we're doing.
just the city communications.
Yeah,
Staff
I
does
feel
that.
like,
Okay.
I feel like this person could definitely be like the subject matter expert that whoever is doing the communicating can
Yeah,
talk to.
okay.
But then the communication experts can, because I feel like these are kind of different skill sets, you know?
Yeah,
And also, this person's, yeah, I just feel like, you know,
That's good. And we could put partner with the city communication or something
Yeah.
Yeah.
like that.
Right, okay, I like it.
There you go. I just handed you my computer, you comfortable with it?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
well, I mean, we're putting all of these under this new staff person does all of this. Not to set us back, but do we need to put all of that under, this person needs to do all these things? Because all these things are important. So if we don't get a staff person, does none of this stuff
I
get
think we're
done?
reframing it as like the city should prioritize
Okay.
these things.
That's what it sounded
And the person
like.
is just one of those things.
And that's part of the suggestion. is
Right,
This
that's
person
first
could
paragraph.
do all of these things, but regardless, the city should try and do all of these things somehow.
Yes.
but we are recommending that we hire a
Yeah.
full-time person, right?
Right.
I think.
I think we still are.
Yeah, I think it's a
Whoever
good
this
idea.
person is.
And whenever the time is right, if I could make one more proposal.
Yes, hold
Sure.
that, let's get this first part, and then, I hear what you're saying, and I think we can language it in a way that, because, yeah, because you don't want to lose those things, because it was buried inside of sort of a role and expectation
Yeah,
of a
because
person.
even if we didn't get a person, because this is just a recommendation, we don't want all of these things abandoned. We
Right.
still want reviews, we still want some community engagement, we still want some of that. Because some of that could get done without a person. I don't want it to all hinge on a new staff person.
Well, and I think that's what Jake was saying, is that the community engagement piece is in a different department. It shouldn't even fall under this person, right? So it should just be taken out.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
that fall under the oversight body, board and commission to assist him, or whoever we choose?
I mean, I don't think a board typically gets involved in community engagement. I mean, they just kind of oversee the decisions that are being made, where the money's going, approve what that person is doing with their time. I mean, in my opinion, I don't know. I haven't.
All right, so I'm going to bring us back to the sort of the opening paragraph with the guiding principles that will be aligned to your strategic vision. And don't worry about the wordsmithing right now. We just want to make sure we've got the right context at the beginning of the report. And in fact, it may not even go in this order. We'll make sense of the order. So data-driven, being strategic using the root policy assessment to help inform priorities and specific metrics, ensure that assessments are conducted on a periodic basis. Commitment of investment, city needs to invest in staff and resources to further these recommendations and leverage outside new sources. Get creative, expand all kinds of housing options and programs, think outside the box, bring in lots of various partners. Engage and inform the community, tell the story of why Inglewood will benefit from affordable housing. Engage the community in co-creating additional solutions programs and identifying needs that may not be in the needs assessment. Find the gaps, get people on board. Go deep, acknowledge that this is a crisis and needs deep focus and attention. Affordable housing should be a key focus of Inglewood policy and resources. Address the entire housing continuum, transitional housing to permanent supportive to seniors, veterans, special needs to affordable rental to workforce and affordable home ownership. And then are we leaving the prioritize the funding sources up there?
I mean, I think that comes as a tactic.
I think it is too. I don't think it's a strategy. So that's the
It's
sort
fine.
of context setting that is like a challenge to the city. And Sophie, what were you saying? What did you want to add?
Oh, I was just saying, I don't care if it's in that initial paragraph. I just want to make sure it's not where it is now and it goes down with the funding so that that informs our preferences of those funding options. That's all. I just want that to be
Yep.
brought back together.
Am I missing funding?
That's the investment piece. So resources, I think we should say funding.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, in the actual, because we had fund, build, assist, and preserve, and in the
Second.
recommendations,
There's no fund in this.
there's no fund. in
It's the
this.
second dash,
Yeah.
under that number 1.
Create a dedicated affordable housing
Yeah.
fund.
Where is this? I'm sorry.
Right here, under provide. and
Oh,
use,
got it.
you know, right
Okay.
there.
Ah,
See that one?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So,
I think we pull up the person and we give some vague, not vague, horrible idea, general, sorry. I sounded like a politician, I apologize, I'm not. We give some, general, things that this, person would be responsible for, but we pull out these specifics, so it, to your point, Sam, it doesn't get lost, right?
right, because as I'm just looking at Hugo's outline, it looks like our number 1 bullet point is this person does everything under the first dash. And I don't, that
But we're
worries
getting rid of the
me.
community
But we're-
engagement piece out of there, so it'd
Okay.
be everything but that now.
I mean, I don't think we should be writing a job description for this person. I don't think that's our role.
No, I agree. I think but creating goals maybe for that.
Right, but all
position.
of this. Sorry. All of this is under
Yeah, I
want this new person that doesn't exist. Like,
I would also suggest that it's a little too specific to say this new person. I would say this is staff resources, whether that's
yeah,
people,
that's the
portions of
investment in
people, a
staff.
department, a team, consultants, I think, especially considering how much of this they adopt, they could say, well, we're only doing this part, but we don't need a person. That investment just goes away then. So anyway, I think we're being a little too specific about, here's this person, here's what this person does. I think the goal here is for the city to invest in staffing, city staff resources to focus on affordable housing.
now that is,
That
I
could
will
be
say
this
that
line
is
right here to me.
distinct.
That should be what that line is.
Yes, because it is we might want to add something there. So let me just say back what I'm hearing, so as a check. So first of all, that we're not, we pull out the specifics of what we said this person, and those become part of the other recommendations. And that there is a specificity in terms of recommending a person. It could be other resources as well, but what I heard is that they really want a dedicated staff person,
Yeah.
right? We're all in agreement
Yes.
there. So we're not going to say what that person is, a general, here's what they'd be accountable for, but no job description. And then we pull out, and it could be as broad as champion affordable housing initiatives, right? And then you pull out the facilitation of public-private partnerships, the community engagement piece, yeah?
Right.
Okay.
I propose too that you add in the oversight committee as well, the
Oh, yes.
person plus the board.
So we haven't gotten to the oversight committee
I-
quite yet.
Yeah, I just think that it should just be as vague, right? Like the board and the person kind of, I don't know, that's maybe together.
And let me make sure I understand what you're saying.
because this first sentence, this is an important enough issue that the task force feels we need a full-time staff member with ongoing board support and governance to help continue to advance the initiatives.
I almost see that as living in sort of the engage the community piece, have the community involved, because this advisory board are gonna be members of the community that are providing
Maybe
continual
that's what
input,
you were saying.
advisement of these initiatives, this person, and, you know, the accountability of these initiatives.
Okay, so what you're suggesting is under community engagement, the,
Create a community
Create
board, a board of
the
community.
oversight, do you want to call it, community board?
Board of commissioners, or, I don't know.
I think it's the function as an advisory board. It's not
Create an
oversight,
advisory
it's getting community involvement and volunteers to ensure these things are moving along. I think that's typically what we describe as an
I
advisory
haven't
board.
forgotten.
I'm so sorry, Erin.
And maybe Kevin, that's what you meant too, when you were
There's
saying
some-
community
Maybe
engagement, because I don't know,
somebody
that I
Oh,
misunderstood.
No worries.
All right, so what I have is this community engagement, and underneath community engagement will be this creation of this advisory board and to partner with the city in this community education campaign, right? Okay, great. All right, so now how it's the sort of formatting is, we're getting sort of, how I would say, are like buckets. Just make sure I make this red. So you have your opening paragraph, which are those guiding principles. Then you have your administrative actions. So that's about the creation of this dedicated person. Then you have your community engagement, which will include the advisory board and the community education campaign. Then we go into fund, because that kind of got moved underneath the position. And then under fund, you have your prioritize the funding sources that distribute impact across multiple stakeholders, leverage profits from property sales, ownership, support sustainable, affordable housing development. Then you have this create a dedicated housing fund that raises predictable and consistent funding from a variety of sources. So that's under fund. Okay, I want to pause and I want to go back to Jake.
So I propose that while we're conjuring up a new staff member, that we task this person, specifically recommend that this person does investigations of like STR applications, like in an excise roll or like looking for fraudulent applications. And,
Do you want to get that specific in your?
I do, because that is something that Denver does, because they have they have a dedicated excise cop, but that's all they do all day long. And this is a hole in Englewood's STR regulations enforcement, and I just feel like this is an opportunity to fill it, because how else are we gonna make that happen? I mean, right now, we're imagining a new staff member. It seems like a good opportunity, and it's, affordable housing coordinator, it seemed to me that it fits, just somebody who, among their duties is to find people who have said on their paperwork that they live at the STR that are lying. So, STR investigations, I guess, basically.
Okay, so I want to check, because, and thank you. What I heard was, what we don't want to do is write a job description that's very specific. So how I have it right now is create a dedicated position that would champion affordable housing initiatives, facilitate public-private partnerships, oversee funding requests and allocations, provide annual reviews. And Jake's proposal is STR, what did you call it? Investigation.
Yeah, or maybe we could say if not, this person just very deliberately recommended that somehow or other that niche gets filled.
Yeah, we wanted to say something about short-term rentals, period, and we haven't yet.
Maybe that's under preserve, maybe
Is
that
that
is a
under-
preserve role, which
put it
is,
on the city,
is
like, you need to-
facilitate this investigation into short-term rentals,
Yeah,
I think.
that's what, I agree that the city should do that, but as far as our draft,
No, I think.
that's where I think it should go.
I think an appropriate recommendation is to enforce, investigate, and eliminate fraud on short-term rentals that
Yeah.
negatively affect affordable housing. And that could be a clear bulleted recommendation
Under preserve, I think.
under, yeah,
Yeah.
it could be, yeah.
Can you just say it to me again?
See if we get-
Oh.
Play it back.
The city should,
Make them technical.
the city should, enforce short-term rental
Policies, investigate fraud, and, I don't know, misuse of short-term rentals that negatively affect affordable housing supply. Whether that's this particular person, or it's a code enforcement official, or it's a, whatever, lots of different.
The city should enforce
Short-term rentals.
short-term rental policies, investigate fraud.
And,
Eliminate.
Preserve affordable housing.
yeah, I think somehow we tailor that to not only enforce current policy, but like also
Ensure
continually
future.
consider short-term rental policy and how it's negatively affecting the availability of affordable housing.
I think we do have to mention that, like, this is too, because this negatively affects affordable housing.
Yeah,
Now, I have a question about the short-term rentals. Now, aren't they supposed to all be licensed to be a short-term rental?
Yeah.
Wouldn't there already be somebody that would be investigating these short-term rentals? Or is supposed to be investigating to make sure that this is already in compliance, and if they are in compliance, registered?
Well, so my understanding is that anybody that's brazen enough to basically just fill out an application to say, yeah, I live at this property 6 or 12 months out of the year, that if they say that, my understanding is Englewood right now doesn't have a mechanism to catch those people.
Interesting.
So, and I think largely just because of the size of the city.
We do have a mechanism. We employ a third-party monitor that monitors our third-party, or our short-term rental listings. If there are any unlicensed listings, those are supposed to be screened and removed. We also have a direct relationship with Airbnb for that as well. Is this system 100%? No. Is any system 100%? No. We're actually enforcing against one home in Englewood at this point, where the owner has just been flagrant and has actually figured out a way to elude every system. That person has a court date down the hall in December. As I said, we have about 60 licensed rentals right now, and we're in enforcement against that single home at this point. We don't have any others under investigation at this point. They're all licensed.
Brad, who covers that? What division is covering these short-term rental investigations? Who would go out to do that? Code enforcement, is that?
So we would start it because we're the ones that have the relationship with that third-party monitor. So we would get the information and we would work in code enforcement to actually initiate the formal process to enforce against them.
How easy would it be for our group or our person to coordinate and get information from the third party to make their job easier?
Well, I think what you're describing, we would just shift it from one of my staff persons to that staff person. I don't think it would be a different exercise.
Okay, so we got something in there. Is that satisfying
Yeah.
what you're getting at? Okay, great. So, the administrative organization, before I move on, did you get your question answered?
I did, thank
Okay,
you.
good. The administrative and organizational, that includes the hiring of a full-time dedicated person with this very broad description of what they would do, the community engagement piece, and then next is fund. So I want to make sure that you're comfortable with what is under fund. So if you look on, on the first page, under the dedicated position, it says prioritize funding sources that distribute impact across multiple stakeholders, leverage profits, support sustainable, affordable housing development. So that would go under your fund. And then the second would be create a dedicated affordable housing fund that raises predictable and consistent funding from a variety of sources. Proposed funding sources include but are not limited to. Are we comfortable with that under fund?
I think it's a good start to move forward on.
Okay?
I agree.
And then,
I did have one thing on,
yeah,
well, no, never mind. Let's go.
I did propose a slight, just a note that we're listing these funding sources, but some sort of formal analysis should be done to identify the funding sources that fall most in alignment with our goals. Like those priorities that you're moving there. So that was the only thing that I feel like is kind of missing in this outline. It's a little ticky-tacky, but.
No, I think that's great, and I think that falls in line again with our idea of being data-driven and data-informed in these.
And not super specific, right?
okay, so we'll put a sentence in there about analyzing funding options, sources, okay? Then we move to build. So, first of all, I'm gonna do a time check with folks. It's 7:15. It's highly unlikely we get through this in the next 15 minutes. Are y'all good with going a bit longer? Okay. All right, let's talk about build.
I'm gonna take a little break.
Oh,
Sorry.
does anyone else need a
Also
break? You wanna take a couple minute break?
Sure.
Yeah?
Also gotta tell my ride, I'm gonna be late. So,
You need a ride? I'll take it.
no, got good.
Okay.
Make another tea without my nail. I think we're gonna get started though. Finally. I feel like we're actually starting to.
I think we're gonna fly through this last part.
I think that person was the biggest piece.
5:30. And I said, oh, you're supposed to be at the Affordable Housing Task Force. And he said, oh, I'm out of town, so I don't, maybe we can attend this one virtually, but anyway.
Well, I mean, it was an added meeting.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure, Shelley, make sure it's getting a notice.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It was interesting, 12 months ago, we were working on this, let's say 10 months ago. I recommended a strategic vision and guiding principles. And then we moved from that to sort of the fun, build, assist, preserve. So I'm so happy you got it back around.
I think it helps.
All right. So now we're on to build, so I'll just direct you to page 2.
Amber.
And the first sort of bullet is expand housing options. Any proposals?
I have a proposal that under streamlined development processes 4, we add existing policies and allowances to create time and cost savings.
Say that again, existing policies.
And allowances to create time and cost savings.
Anyone have an objection to that proposal? So it'll be a bullet point that says existing policies. So that headliner is streamlined development processes for existing policies and allowances to create time and cost savings.
Meaning conditional on affordable units? Is that what that means, or?
I mean, to create the affordable units, to create the ADUs and the cottage houses that we already allow instead of, try to make it more affordable for homeowners to build them.
Is that sort of a strategy, and then these are the tactics then? I mean, because it seems like some of the things listed here then are kind of meeting that, like.
Aaron, can you speak into the?
I see what you're saying.
Thank you.
That seems almost like a summary of some of these things. It probably should include some other things, but like, we're talking about, and I'm sorry, say that again, say your streamlined
Says
existing.
streamlined development process is for, and then it has a series of bullets. And the proposed addition is existing policies and allowances to create time and cost savings.
Oh, so I'm sorry, your proposal is just to expand that first bullet.
Kind of, yeah. Well, or to like create that as a bullet underneath to focus on the existing policies and allowances to create time and cost savings through the design and the permitting and whatever, and then continue to allow it, and then in certain zone districts, the lot division process. I mean, I don't know if that's.
I mean, I think I would think that we would get there by adding that into, not just saying streamlined development processes, but, that whole bit that you had mentioned.
Make it the first bullet point under.
Can you say that again, please?
Streamline development processes for existing policies and allowances.
Got it. Okay. So not a
And
separate.
include allowances, right? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, or like zoning allowances, I don't know, whatever.
So streamline development
Entitlement.
processes for existing policies and allowances to create time and cost savings.
Entitlements might be a better word there. I don't know. Entitlement allowance. It's fine. Allowances is great. I'll leave it.
And then I'll just add these should include small lot development opportunities. And then the bullet points below that, support development of diverse housing types, and then the bullets under that. And then there is, yeah, so I'm trying to figure out strategy.
Under multi-family developments, it says require a percentage of units to be affordable. Is this where we want to?
I'm thinking maybe next time we can dig into the numbers. I don't know, that's just my proposal, is that we come up with this format and then next time we really dig into the specifics of what are the recommendations for affordable units. And
When are you suggesting doing that?
in the December meeting, no?
No.
Okay.
December is about alignment,
Okay.
a vote if necessary, and setting you up for the study session with city council.
Okay. Then never mind.
So we need to hash it out.
Okay.
Yeah, is this the part where we put in percentages that were
75%.
75%?
I mean, I'm just.
So the
It
first
can
question
come down
before
from
you
there,
go.
right? We're not gonna go up.
Before you go into what percentages, the question is, do you include them? So we need to have some alignment there. And I'll just take you back to the conversation at the beginning, which is around the data-driven. So that what we said was the first guiding principle being strategic, using the root policy assessment to help inform priorities and specific metrics. I'm not saying you don't, I'm just saying I want to take you back to that sentence because there was conversation about, do you have enough knowledge to, not knowledge, that's not the right word I'm looking for, information to set those percentages at this point.
Do we want to just say a minimum? Because what if they come up 5%? What is that gonna do?
Yeah, she's totally right. I think we have to take our shot at some point here.
Yeah, and remember that this is just a recommendation.
Okay,
Yeah.
so can you tell me where you are, because
Oh, sure. I was looking right here.
read the sentence, please.
So it's support development of diverse housing types. Multifamily developments require a percentage of units
Got it.
affordable.
Okay,
So, it mentions percentage, but doesn't give one.
got it.
We don't want to get stuck with 5%. Don't do that.
So what is the recommendation?
25%?
Yeah, I think 25%, I mean, off my ears, that seems high, but I would rather that than 5. And if we start at 25.
So are we thinking of, this is specifically multifamily developments? Is that right? Yeah.
So this is an inclusionary housing.
Yeah.
So
I think that sounds good.
I would say require a significant or meaningful percentage, such as 25%. I mean, I think there needs to be some additional research on what the market will bear. I mean, if we do something that's unreasonable, we won't get any
won't get a
multifamily
build
housing
at all.
development.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So I think we
require-
can still put in 25% such as, but like require a meaningful percentage of units to be affordable in lieu of fees, or fee in lieu, such as 25%, something like that.
Do we want to say more than surrounding jurisdictions? Or is
Just throw a
that,
little shade
I
on
like
it,
what
so-
you said. I'm kidding.
So let me
Maybe
read
that,
it back.
that is kind of
Certain
shady.
city to
You know
the
what?
south,
Yeah.
yeah.
Never mind.
So let me read it back. Require a meaningful percentage of units to be affordable or fee in lieu such as 25%.
That keeps it simple.
Yeah.
Do we want to offer a fee in lieu option?
Uh,
I
That's
think
my
that it should be a
question.
high fee in lieu. Like, I think we should focus on making the fee in lieu the second option. I don't know.
So
how
again, meaningful percentage or meaningful fee in lieu.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I wonder,
Yeah.
I wonder if fee in lieu is even useful in a city as built out as Englewood is, because it's like, so they deposit, we get a multifamily development, with no affordable units, and then we get this money into some affordable housing fund, and then what do we do with it?
We can
Well,
fund
that's what
the
we've
programs,
talked about,
you
other
know, and-
funding here that we're talking, from these other sources of linkage fees and, well, and it even mentions inclusionary zoning fees under
But
this.
Jake, what are you saying, like, there's no space, period? So like the space that's gonna be used will be built?
It's redevelopment. I mean, it would be redevelopment of existing.
Well,
I-
and maybe, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe that's something that gets reevaluated as it goes too, because maybe the fee in lieu isn't high, or maybe we do eliminate it if, I don't know, it's just to create the option at first.
I guess I would personally advocate for either no fee in lieu or a really painful fee in lieu, like a.
Yeah, because like the other town, that
like
was,
Longmont.
they came, Longmont that came to talk to us, they, I got the impression that they were like, yeah, we pretty much just have fee in lieu now.
They,
Well, I will tell you though, eliminating it is,
it's tough.
market rate developers are not the best developers of affordable housing. Also, there's other types of affordable housing that needs to be built that's not mixed income housing, like permanent supportive housing. So getting a fee in lieu, you have a fund in the city to layer in with LIHTC deals or whatever, like the city of Denver can put sometimes up to $60,000 per unit of their own money into a LIHTC deal to make those things work. So we don't always want market rate developers building affordable housing. It's great when they do, and they do it well, and they're the right size building and the right configurations and all of that. Think about not just market rate, but a luxury building. You've got 100 luxury units, and it's scattered throughout. You've got cheaper unit. You know what I mean? I think the fee in lieu of option with the right guide rails or guardrails can be useful.
That makes sense.
So maybe a significant fee in
So
lieu?
we're
Can
okay with the
someone
same
make a
language?
proposal?
I propose we say a significant fee in lieu.
Okay, so what we have right now, and y'all help me with this, require a meaningful percentage of units to be affordable or fee in lieu, such as 25%. So the 25% is in relationship to the percentage of
Number of
units?
units, yep.
Okay, so let's move that.
Or pay a significant fee in lieu.
Or a significant,
I think it should be pay as a significant fee in lieu, right?
or, okay. All right, require a meaningful percentage of units, and such as 25% to be affordable, or pay a significant fee in lieu.
Sounds good.
Require a meaningful percentage of units such as 25% to be affordable, or pay a significant fee in lieu. Going once? Okay,
What
It's
would
specific.
happen if they just decide to pay the significant fee in lieu?
It goes into a fund and the city can allocate that to support another affordable housing development or.
And your point is they could give that money to a nonprofit like Habitat or something, yeah.
So they're helping
It
even though
gives
they
some
don't know.
flexibility.
They're
You
still
just say-
helping.
Sometimes it works great when they build it, but sometimes you don't want these developers building
That
affordable
makes
housing.
sense.
Or there's unique affordable housing that needs to be built that's,
I mean, we have a supportive housing facility right now that's struggling to find the funds that we're trying to build, so I think that's,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Into a fund to build stuff that would not get built otherwise.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Free market. Like,
they're helpful, Kevin.
I see it being a problem, to be honest with you, but if that money is going to nonprofits like Habitat and they would build houses with those funds, I just see developers being shady on that and dodging and paying a significant fee in lieu opposed to taking a hit with affordable housing.
Responses?
I think it would really be equal. It would be, for instance, like Littleton says, $269,000 per, let's say a developer builds 20 units of housing. They have to build 1 unit of those to be affordable. Or they can pay $269,000 into this fund, which is equivalent, what they thought was how much it would cost to build a unit of affordable housing. So it's hitting them either way. It's providing the same unit. It's just whether the market rate developer is providing that unit or that money is being used for a nonprofit or an affordable housing developer to build that unit. So the cost impact should be the same.
to that developer.
And I think the
Sounds-
oversight of those funds comes from that board, that advisory board, right? So like who is getting those funds from that fee in lieu? And that's the community's input. That's how I see it.
Any other refinements to build?
Well, then the next part, the incentivize affordable developments and sales. Offered tax credit permits for affordable second units. This goes into my concern about ADUs and short-term rentals. I don't want to have a situation where we're helping to fund someone's short-term rental project.
Is that what that line is ADUs?
I feel like that verbiage kind of got mixed up from the original proposal to, maybe I'm
Yeah.
speaking for
I don't know
Jake.
what the second unit is.
I think it was the second ADU that you were talking about, right?
Oh.
Like you mentioned, like if you build one, then the second one has to be affordable?
Oh, yeah, that was one thing
Yeah, so I think that like,
well,
that's how it was presented and it got misinterpreted.
well, what if we what if we just make it really clear that in one way or another, council or whomever needs to find a way that ADUs can't be STRs, and like, maybe we don't know exactly how that works, but maybe we just put that in there that needs to be implemented. Just an idea.
Do we want the ADUs to be affordable though, or do we want them just to be market? Because if they're just market, they're not really.
I guess, yeah, like what she was talking about, I was kind of imagining like the first, like if you want like two ADUs, like, you know, maybe the first one could be market rate, like, but to his point, it's gotta be like a long-term lease. And then maybe the second one needs to be affordable. A thought.
I mean, as long as you're not allowed to build an ADU that's enormous and 3 stories or whatever, then a right-sized ADU to me is naturally affordable.
Yes.
That's what I'm
That's
saying,
right.
yeah, even market rate should
Yeah.
be
But I
somewhat.
mean, in Inglewood, there's really small places that should be naturally affordable, and they're not. And you're paying $3,000 in rent for something that's,
I mean,
like,
there-
it doesn't, like, I just don't think it's gonna naturally happen. So, I mean, I'm just asking if, like, because I know it was discussed by other people who aren't here. So I'm bringing
No, this
that
is-
up.
I think this is one of the other strategies of we're not just talking about income restrictions, but we're talking about other typologies of homes, smaller homes, that, I don't know if we want to get into the administrative burden of, you know, income verifying every person that's living in an ADU, but just the nature of a 450 square foot unit for one person is going to cost much less.
And then if there's more of them too, I mean, that's the other thing is if they're building more than 20 a year or whatever.
I think if you
Or 20 total.
really restrict those to be affordable, whatever we decide, I don't think any will get built.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it'll affect the economics of how they even.
They have to be subsidized
finance.
somehow to be built, yeah.
So can someone, so what, I think what we're discussing is this bullet point, offer tax credits / permits for affordable second units. Do we want to, does anyone have a proposal of how it is that it might address the concern around, first of all, clarify second units, because it sounds like it's a little different. And then secondly, what are the other parameters that you want to put around that?
In terms of the subsidy for that second ADU or whatever, I mean, does the city have leverage to reduce or eliminate fees, and, you know, property taxes or something to try to help subsidize it, provide a way to make the property owner whole for having an affordable ADU?
Right, isn't that what offer tax credits is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed that.
So offer tax credits / permits for affordable second units. And Joe, you had a concern around
Short-term.
short-term rentals.
So I propose that we clarify that the subsidy is for affordable rental, for the rent to be affordable, right? So not to build it, but you create the tax subsidy because they're building something that's going to be affordable to a certain AMI.
So would it be offer tax credits / permits for second units to ensure affordable?
Or who commit to, second units that commit to affordability standards or parameters or something.
And I'm sorry to be clear, we're talking about second units as being additional ADUs or the first ADU?
That's the question. I think,
I think Hugo's approach was an additional ADU, which would then go back to additional.
the second
So,
ADU.
yeah, like.
We're almost there, y'all. I know everyone's tired.
I think if a homeowner builds an ADU or 2 ADUs, they're doing it because they can afford to, and they also are looking to
Make money.
Make money. So,
Or house aging parents.
or that too. But as far as like any sort of assistance for people in those homes, in those ADUs, if we're giving, wouldn't that fall under assistance programs if we were like to subsidize the rent for those as opposed to purposefully make restricted, cheaper ADUs?
I mean, this is the concept of a whole additional voucher program, like,
Right.
A parallel to Section 8, where you can take your voucher and subsidize your rent anywhere you go.
My point of view would be, like, let the market just do the ADUs, insofar as that they are long-term rentals.
And if we build more, they become more affordable.
Well,
Yeah,
and here's the thing, is adding supply in a built-out community, right? And this is one way to do it. It's one of several. I don't think we want to over-focus on it, but yeah, I think it helps to make it easier. I don't think we ever talked about House Bill 1152, which was the state's bill to have cities encourage ADU development. I would propose that we add a line in here to
I
add
thought
strategies.
that's what this was specifically originally, was to encourage, to help by offering the tax credits for the building, not for them to living in it, but to build them. That's what I thought that was, because it's under
Well-
incentivize
build.
affordable development and sales. So like, this is their way to encourage by offering tax credits and permits if they're doing one that's tied to affordability, like affordability, if it's going to be more affordable,
Yeah,
right?
the
Is
state
that
didn't
what
have any
that is?
affordability requirements. The state is saying cities should make it easier for people in R1 districts to build ADUs.
So whoever proposed this, isn't that what they were going for? Like, we make it easier by offering the credits and permits? Because I don't know who proposed this.
But he's saying once you get into reduced incomes, then you're creating a voucher program, right? Because then that becomes a subsidy for that other percentage. If you're making it affordable to 60%, someone's got to cover the 40%.
Yeah,
Okay.
or you're saying just make it easier and cheaper to build them regardless.
That's what I thought
Yes.
this was, but
Okay.
then it says for affordable.
I think this
second
was
units,
nearly
so
focused
this
on
is-
Hugo's goal of multiple ADUs on a single property and then subdividing. That's.
Did you started with that you had a proposal?
I did have a proposal to add, and to me, this is backing up and just saying, make it easier to build ADUs, following guidelines, or following the requirements given by the state in House Bill 241152, which gives specific strategies, including things like, pre-approved or pre-approved building designs, basically, like, hey, if you build it this way, it's gonna be easy to build here,
And this
giving those
is already
pre-approved
approved,
plans or whatever, yeah.
by-
And there's a number of different strategies, there's a whole list of it. Really, the
like
goal here,
prefabricated
without
ones.
getting too in the weeds, is just like, build more ADUs and don't let them be STRs, right? Like, isn't that?
Yeah.
But how do we encourage
So
that building by
Aaron,
streamlining?
I need to get something that everyone can react against and we can have conversation, but let's get the recommended refinement down. So say it again, please, Aaron. Make it easier.
Encourage the construction of accessory dwelling units by implementing House Bill 24-1152 while ensuring
24 dash what?
1152.
That you know that?
I looked it up and
Okay.
wrote it down.
All right, encourage the construction of ADUs by implementing.
House Bill 24-1152 and similar strategies while ensuring ADUs are not short-term rentals.
Okay, everyone hold your comments. Similar strategies while ensuring, what was it? I'm sorry.
ADUs are not short-term rentals, used as short-term rentals.
Are not used as short-term rentals. Okay, let me read it back. Encourage the construction of ADUs by implementing House Bill 24-1152 and similar strategies and ensure ADUs are not used as short-term rentals. How's that?
I have a proposal I'd like to bring to the table as well. I would like to have a 10-year mandatory rule that those home ADUs must be affordable housing units. There's a lot of out-of-state investors that can utilize these backyards to build these and use those as tax write-offs. I was reading an article that I wanted to bring to you guys, which I think I'm supposed to do that next meeting.
They actually sent it out
Okay.
for folks to
So
read.
with that being said, I would definitely like to see a 10-year mandatory requirement that those ADUs stay as affordable housing so that they are not just put out there for a year and then turned into an STR. We're looking to put people into homes long-term. I'm a renter. I've been in my place for 17 years now. So I would say, there's a lot of out-of-state investors. There's a lot of people that are there to make a profit. We want to focus on getting people into homes and housing people. I understand that there's an emergency here to get people into homes, not to make people rich. So that's what I would propose, is that we put a 10-year mandatory affordable housing requirement on these ADUs.
Can I ask a question, Kevin? Is your concern that they are affordable to a certain income level or that they are not short-term rentals?
Not short-term rentals.
Because I think we're covering that in this. My concern with that is putting that requirement of affordable specifies how much rent can be collected on that and makes them economically a lot less viable. So they just won't get built for 10 years, or a lot fewer of them will get built. I think if your concern is about short-term rentals, then absolutely, that's what I said, we don't want them to be short-term rentals.
Yeah,
We don't
so
want that.
outside investors won't come in and swoop them all up.
That's what I'm worried
Yeah,
about.
if we're strong about short-term rental strategies, then that's gonna be less of a concern.
Mountain towns are doing a really good job of it right now. Like Buena Vista's got a really good example of how they're managing it without getting into the weeds of it. But there are good examples of people who are discouraging short-term rentals through their small houses that they're building.
I'm all for the restriction on short-term rentals.
Amen.
I think restricting it to some level of affordability is handcuffs. You know, they just won't get built.
Yeah, and one of the things, a counter proposal, I guess, is that we had talked about keeping these naturally occurring affordable, right? Like market rate, because there's gonna be more of them. But you're saying if they go for sale, basically, or to an investor?
The investor would come in and start building in these backyards and turning them into short-term rentals is what my concern is.
But they have to be owner
If we're really strong
occupied.
about not allowing short-term rentals on any of these developments, then that shouldn't be a concern at all.
Yeah, so I would like I said, to address, the elephant in the room is that we've got people that need homes, and we need people that, homes that these affordable for people. There's a lot of people suffering right now that are homeless, that need a hand up, not a hand out. So that's something I'm worried about, is providing affordable housing for these people for a long term, and not allowing them to turn around, having it as an affordable housing for 1 year and turning it into an STR. Then we've defeated our purpose, the whole reason we're here, to try to come up with affordable housing for, citizens here in Inglewood, Colorado. So I just want to put that out there because I'm concerned about that and, I can see it happening.
I think
What I
I would say the STR policy of perpetuity, not just 10 years, but like, we want the units for housing, not for,
Yeah, and maybe just make sure that's continually enforced by that third party or whatever. But just make sure that in one way or another, the city's on top of it, that they don't get turned into STRs.
I mean, it's an interesting calculus, isn't it? Trying to find the sort of equilibrium, I don't know if that's the right word, between having an incentive for whether it's a ADU or whatever, you have people who are incentivized to build, but at the same time making it affordable. So it's going to be this dynamic kind of tension and equilibrium,
Sure.
which goes back to why having a dedicated person and an oversight body is a really great idea. So it's not just a task force who came together for 1 year, but you have this ongoing.
And another concern of mine, is with these investors, recently I was in a city council meeting where Steve Ward was talking about investors will have properties that they'll let them sit empty for a tax write-off. That's a problem. If they're letting those sit empty for a tax write-off, well, we're defeating our purpose again. We aren't putting people in these homes or being left empty so that they can collect their money as a tax write-off. I think there needs to be some rules here with these ADUs, especially with out-of-state developers coming in to develop the ADUs in the backyards. I can see it being abused is what I'm worried about, and I'm concerned that we're going to defeat our purpose, and I don't want to have it happen. We've worked hard on this whole thing to make it happen. There's a lot of people involved, and it's been years of process.
Well, I think in the first page for the housing fund, I think it's been thrown out, and I'll reiterate it again. I think a vacancy tax could be added to that to help. And that could go for housing, that could go for commercial real estate. Anytime any of these properties sit empty and unused, it's a blight. It's a blight on the community.
It got shut down in city council the other night.
The vacancy tax?
Well, they wanted to give fees to people for vacancies because of the blight, because of the vandalism and everything else that's going around in the city. So basically it was shut down. They didn't call it a tax, it was a fee is what it was called, a fee in there.
I think
So
maybe
it
a
did shut
long-term
down.
tax would be more impactful too, to the revenue stream, but also less of a fee, right? Like less of a punishment, just a policy that we put in place. Maybe.
council can put a fee in place, but not a tax.
Yeah, I see.
Oh.
But I mean,
The
maybe
voters
that's something
should
that
put
voters would vote on,
I
and
see.
could override the city council who said no. So I don't know.
So I'm going to take us back. Any other final refinements to build? What I heard was, Aaron, you're saying not only, let's don't put a 10-year, let's have it be in perpetuity forever, that it's in the language here that they cannot be used as short-term rentals.
Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
100%.
Anything else with build? Assist and preserve.
You're gonna love this. I have another House bill proposal to include and preserve,
Yeah, me
which
too.
is 241175.
Yeah, that's the same one.
Right of first refusal.
Bring
Right
it.
of first refusal. This is already presented to council, and there was resistance to this, but this is how a lot of housing.
I'm so sorry. I'm having a really hard time hearing.
sorry.
Aaron
I'm leaning away.
And Joe, that area of the table.
Thank you, Sophie.
Yeah, sorry about that. I propose that we include a recommendation here referencing House Bill 241175, which asks or requires municipalities to implement a policy around a right of first refusal of either a city or their designee, and you don't have to write all this down. I
Okay,
would just
good.
say implement House Bill 241175. But it's around if a multifamily housing development goes up for sale, the city or its designee, 'cause I don't think the city should buy any housing, but a nonprofit or the housing authority should have a first right to buy that at the market rate or at the offered price. I think council could use a little more education around what that means and what that can look like. It can be quick, it doesn't have to be laborious, it doesn't have to interrupt the market, but it gives an opportunity for naturally occurring multifamily housing to be preserved as that and not torn down and redeveloped into market rate or luxury housing.
And this is just for multifamily?
Yeah, it's 5 units and more.
And it's existing affordable housing only.
Okay.
I also want to add to that proposal and say that I propose we transfer this right of first refusal to the housing authority specifically.
So what I wrote is to ensure, I don't know if this is right, to ensure naturally occurring housing by implementing HB 24-1175, giving the housing authority the first right of refusal for multifamily homes.
Yeah, it's not naturally occurring, this would be preserve affordable housing. by
Existing
implementing
affordable housing.
Existing affordable housing.
Preserve
Existing affordable housing.
existing affordable housing by implementing
HB 24.
1175,
Yep.
giving the housing authority, so that's what I heard. Is that right? That it's not the city, you're not directing the city, but.
Yeah, the city wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I think the city also has some issues with the housing authority. I would say a nonprofit designee, which could include,
Oh, giving
could
a
include
nonprofit, okay.
the housing authority.
I mean, who,
There's lots of others.
I know, but the housing authority has they are Inglewood, like, that's.
So preserve existing affordable housing by implementing blah, 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 giving a nonprofit designee the first right of refusal for multifamily homes up for sale.
Yeah, yes.
And this is where that fee and lieu.
Existing
comes in.
affordable multifamily, because
Yeah,
like
I-
that's specific to.
I think the House bill described, I mean, the House bill sets the parameters. for it.
Affordable,
Right,
but
but I
I'll put
think,
it in there.
yeah, how we word it too, though.
Okay, preserve existing affordable housing by giving a nonprofit designee the first right of refusal for existing affordable multifamily homes up for sale. Okay?
Is there anything?
Any, before we move on to that, any objections to that? Sophie, you still with us?
Good.
Okay. Please.
Is there any version of that for, single family?
No, but the city could do something like that.
Like if you're renting a house for, 15 years and the owners want to sell it, would it make sense to?
Wasn't it, there was a bill that Polis vetoed that was like that, and then this is sort of.
This is a
watered down.
reversion,
Well,
yeah,
it was
this is a
Polis's legislation that got shut down.
yeah. But this is a new version of that same thing,
And it's
yes.
focused on existing affordable housing, multifamily. I think this is a great way to start and then, prove. I think there's resistance. People feel like it's an eminent domain, that government shouldn't be buying housing. It doesn't have to be that way, and this does not require it to be that way.
My concern is it takes away from the free market. It takes away from our opportunity. Say I hit the lottery tomorrow and I want to buy that apartment.
And you can offer, $5 million for it. And your intent could be good, but your intent could also be to tear it down and put up luxury. And so the nonprofit designee would have to match your offer. They couldn't beat it, they'd have to match it.
They're just
So that's
given
still
the
the market.
opportunity to match
Yeah.
the private
The
investor.
way it sounds to me is they get the first opportunity.
It's a right of first refusal. So a purchase and sale agreement comes in at a price for a building. They get a certain number of days. I think the
30
law
days.
requires 30, and it could even be shorter.
Okay.
Because you don't want to slow down the process, but it gives the city essentially an opportunity to buy it at that same price. So it's not undercutting the market. It's not undercutting our opportunities to invest in things. It's just ensuring that there's an opportunity for that building or those units to stay naturally occurring or restricted affordable.
I will say the counter argument is that holding it up for 30 days does change the marketability of it a little bit, you know, holding the sale for 30 days and not allowing it to hit the market and gain that competition and gain that. I mean, I'm struggling with this
A
one.
very quick PSA for a large building like that is at the very shortest 180 days anyway.
And Kevin, I mean, this kind of goes into, you know, if the concern is the free market, we're gonna stymie the free market by not letting short-term rentals exist, right? So, you know, we're picking our battles one way or the other. The concern here is for the people who are living somewhere to stay where they are.
I would also say that free market isn't providing affordable housing. for everybody.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
So you have concerns, can you live with it?
I can live with it. I've come to terms with this one.
Okay, great. Any other change, the only other addition I just want to remind you was Jake, who said the city should enforce current short-term rental policies, evaluate future, not reevaluate, and I may not have gotten this right, but evaluate future short-term rental policies, investigate fraud and how it might be impacting affordable housing, or how it might impact.
I would also propose that, and I don't know if this is possible, but I feel like corporate ownership of single-family housing is something else to be really scared of.
Yes, yeah,
I
agree.
Yeah,
So
Say-
that
say-
preservation piece is, I don't have a policy or I just think addressing something about corporate ownership, about
Discourage corporate
BlackRock
investment.
owning, you know,
Right.
20% of single-family homes, you know, that's a problem.
Thank you.
Is this going to go into
Preserve.
assist and preserve?
I think it's.
Okay,
it-
so
it's
can
preserved.
you say it as a recommendation?
We would recommend addressing the growing concern of corporate ownership of single-family homes.
does it just have to be corporate? Because part of my concern,
Yeah.
what I learned from root policy was how many people, just maybe individuals, are not Inglewood residents, own homes in Inglewood and just rent them out. But they're not Inglewood, they live in, I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever, Denver, Littleton.
I think it's only about 20% of single-family homes are not owner-occupied, whether they live
In
in.
Inglewood, no, it's like 52%.
It's
That's
like,
including rental, like multifamily.
Could you say address
Oh.
growing corporate and
Talking single
non-resident ownership
I don't
of
know.
single-family homes?
I'd be interested, because I thought it was much more.
please say that again, sorry.
So I'm trying to include yours, but I'm not quite sure what you said.
Okay.
Address growing corporate and non-resident ownership of single-family homes.
I mean, could get more specific of like, or address the growing concern of, it's extractive, like this is like a strip mine of, of our housing stock and the value of it. I don't know how to phrase it off the top of my head at 8 PM, but like, whether it's corporate or just described as like non.
I'm so sorry, is there a mechanism, I didn't hear the last thing that you said, but did this include like a mechanism to address, or it's just kind of stating our concern?
It's stating because I don't have a mechanism. I'm like, look for
Okay.
one, find one and use it.
I mean, I thought at some point some kind of tax or rental licensing fees.
We talked about like a transfer tax,
The
we talked about
transfer
several
tax.
different.
Could you say
Yeah,
it,
that was funding
address the
these.
going,
Rental licensing.
corporate and non-resident ownership of single-family homes that might include,
Or just
what did you say?
investor-owned single-family homes, I think.
Well, no, you were talking about taxes, you were.
Rental licensing fees and progressive real estate transfer tax.
I mean,
Are
there's
those not
lots
also-
of even just having landlords get licensed to be a landlord is something that could go, I mean, I don't have a specific recommendation. A lot of things can be included. I don't know if we're gonna come up with it tonight.
Can I put it as a placeholder? And sometime other than 8 PM, you can, but I'll have it in red. and we're gonna send this out. We're gonna ask for one final.
I have one final proposal for assist.
But before we
Okay.
move off that, did I get, that might include this, I'm just gonna put it here as a placeholder, rental licensing fees and progressive real estate tax.
Me, as a renter, I'm gonna feel the impact of that.
That's what,
And that's the
yeah,
problem.
Got
I'm gonna
it.
feel it. And
Okay.
it's-
I hesitate to
Most of
suggest
it-
something that's
yeah.
just gonna get transferred to the renter.
Well,
Yeah.
I think landlords charge what the market will let them charge, you know?
Sure it did.
I-
It cost me $6,000 more per month, per year to
Yeah.
live in the house I'm currently in right now.
I'm always skeptical of the notion that if we like add some cost for the landlord, that they're just gonna pass it straight on to the renter, because they're just gonna charge what the market will bear.
So I'm gonna take that out, I'm gonna leave it just super vague.
Yes, please.
Okay,
That's fine, yeah.
all right.
Both
What
of
else?
those are included in fund already. Both of those are suggested in the fund as possibilities for the city to explore the potential funding and everything for that. So those are already suggested
Okay.
for them to weigh as possibilities.
Sophie, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, it's
Both
those,
the
what we were just
progressive
talking.
Real estate. Yeah, the real estate transfer tax and the licensing fees, those are two options that were suggested as part of fund earlier on.
Okay.
So to generate resources for assisting and preserving. So the city can explore whether those are good options. as part of
Y'all,
their
we're
analysis.
about to lose our folks, our support folks, so, any final for assist and preserve?
I have one more for assist. And it's to add back in the recommendation number 4, which is the tenant equity vehicle. So require new developers of multifamily buildings to include a tenant, some sort of tenant equity vehicle.
Can you say it one more time, please?
I propose that we require market rate developers of multifamily properties to include some sort of tenant equity vehicle for residents.
That's good.
I think that hits the right level of specificity. Right there.
Market rate developer of multi-family property to include some sort of tenant equity vehicle
For residents.
for residents. Okay, so, first of all, can we thank the staff and tech who stayed? And then next, I so want to thank you all, it was an avid meeting, it was 30 minutes beyond. Real quick, I'm gonna feed this back to you, I'm gonna give you a hard deadline. Any refinements can't be asking questions, can't be something that you're just introducing that no one has heard. It has to be a minor clarification or refinement to what's here, because we're past the final. Is that clear? Yeah? Okay, so, next steps, we have our December meeting. We now have this, and at that December meeting, we're going to, hopefully, we'll just all align. If not, we'll take that vote. And we'll talk about your presentation to City Council, which we now have a date for January 21st. Okay? Thank you all so much. Thank you. Oh my goodness.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
January
That was
21st,
some
I make sure I'm
good
free
work.
that day.
Great work.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
So the 21st, do we know what time that is?
Thank you, Sophie.
Six or seven.